Hello, guys. Welcome back. This is our Friday night Spiritual Insights presentation. My name is Michael Mirdad, so thanks for joining us. In a nutshell, today we're going to talk about commitment. It's such a charged word. In previous years, people would say it's a charged word because it was about people being commitment phobic, right? That people that were afraid of relationship commitment. Now, after all these years that have passed since that became a buzz phrase, there's a lot more people that use the word more expansively than just relationships. I mean, people don't really understand what commitment means. I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, I think it's a um, major statement. What are your priorities? Commitments are a statement to the universe. What our priorities might be. I mean, we all live with commitments. Let's face it. A commitment to do this presentation, at 5:30, on Fridays, and commitments to whatever jobs you have, commitments to the children or whatever else it happens to be. But basically, we could divide commitments into there's healthy commitments and then there's ego-based unhealthy commitments. Because what I'm saying is that the word commitment would mean basically, getting it all back to what are you invested in? What are you committed to? That phrase, commitment, again, there it comes in there. But what are you dedicated to? What are your priorities and so on? Interchange those words and it helps us understand. Commitment doesn't just mean like a partnership. Um, every word you say is a commitment of some kind. When you say, "Oh, I can't stand that such and such," that's a commitment of a sort. You're stating a law, basically. So think about that. Watch your commitments. There's a phrase in the Bible, wherever your heart is, there will your treasure be as well, and for vice versa, wherever your treasure is, there is your heart. Meaning, whatever you value, your soul has an investment in it. Even if it's an unhealthy thing, you're invested in it. You may not want to think that, but there's an investment of some kind. Commitment's far more than just referring to, like I said, partnerships. It's whatever has your attention. Even just your attention is, I'm committed to, hey, what's that? I just made a subtle commitment to knowing more about that. And again, you could have a commitment to sobriety, to watching your favorite show, or commitment to work, friends, projects, and so on. I mean, it is a minor level of commitment. Anything that majorly has your attention is a major commitment of some kind. In a way, a commitment sort of like at its very foundation, when a commitment's first being made, consciously or unconsciously, it's like a way of saying, I'm going to get the ball rolling on that. I'm going to give that some attention, which then also means some investment. Now, I might only put 2% investment and they go, okay, done, cut the tie to that, consciously or unconsciously, not interested. Now, maybe the commitment's not there. That's fine, because you took time to see if it works. What most people do, though, is they put their attention, commitment on something, then sometimes decide, oh, never mind, and they leave that thread out there floating, rather than being so conscious and aware that you say, done, got it, done, it's completed, cord cutting, so to speak. Most people leave that energy just kind of floating out there. And that's, as you know, if you've seen any of my talks, I call that leaks. It creates leaks in our energy field. But a commitment calls us to shift from talking about something to action, a little more action. At first, it's just energy. I'm putting attention on something. But then the more commitment I make, the more I have to shift from talking to walking. Walking the walk or taking action. We also demonstrate the strength or weaknesses. Our strengths and weaknesses can show up in our commitments. For example, if you tell your child, hey, listen, that's unhealthy. You don't want to do that. I'm not going to have you doing that, or else there's going to be unhealthy consequences. But you got to be prepared to follow up, or it's going to show your commitment to a weakness of yourself that you have, of your character. You're actually committing to showing your weakness. Oh man, that doesn't sound very good, right? People do it all the time. So when you say, you watch out, you do that and then there's consequence, you say to a child, and then you don't do anything about it. Man, you have blown it. You have shown tenacity and commitment to character flaw, to weakness. And that really messes a child's mind up. Abuse to a child is the worst thing that you can do that is abusive or hurtful to a child. But the second most abusive thing you can do to a child is a lack of commitment, a lack of follow through, a lack of boundaries. You don't say, when we say the word boundary, when you say I'm setting boundaries, if you don't stick to them, they're not boundaries, because boundaries are healthy. They're complete in a sense. They're not words. A real boundary is not. It's neither a wall, but it's also not air. It's not abstract. A boundary is like somewhere in between those two, and it's stated, and then it's like, here's where I'm at, and I can flex a little with a boundary, but a boundary is like, here's where I'm at. Don't be going somewhere else, or I'm not interested. And if I'm in charge and I'm not interested, and I'm driving the car, like metaphor of leading a family, if I'm driving the car and I'm not interested in doing the off ramp at this time, then we're not taking the off ramp. We're needing to be somewhere in 10 minutes and it's 10 minutes away. We're not stopping to go to an amusement park or whatever else, might be a metaphor for getting distracted. So, it's like the universe is telling us, don't even open your mouth if you're not going to stick to your word, your boundaries, and so forth. And so sometimes we get our butts kicked by not sticking to our statements and our commitments. And, we think that's bad, but the universe is just saying, hey, listen, if you're not getting it, then we'll show it to you in a more dramatic way that what you're doing is not okay. I can remember times of weakness in commitments, and times when there was strength to commitment. I remember a time in high school where a guy was doing some unhealthy things to friends of mine, and I told him not to do that. Well, he sort of called me out, as a commitment. Hey, you have a problem with it, step up. And I'm like, well, crap. Now I'm out there, right? Where's my commitment to, hey, you're not going to do that to friends of mine? So he calls me, meet me tomorrow at noon and we're going to fight. And I'm like, fine, whatever, and I made a commitment. So I showed up, and fortunately he didn't. He's a great guy, but really he was, drugs were, I think, getting the best of him at this time, and he was getting a little out of control. And otherwise we had a great time. We hung out now and then, but this was just over the top. And, I think after this, we weren't as close, but we weren't close friends, but we weren't even as close as the little bit we were. But I think he's the only high school friend guy I knew that I've talked to since. He found me on the internet and said, "Oh my God, is that you? I can't believe I found you." And then was telling me about how he too was into spirituality in high school, and he was now he's confessing it now that he knows I'm open to that sort of thing. I always was, but here he was closet, new age or whatever, as much as you could be that in high school back in the mid 70s or whatever. So that sort of thing happened, and it was kind of a bummer, but I made a commitment. It's like, oh crap, now I'm committed to stepping up and doing something about this. And I guess you could say it worked out. There's things like that. I remember, and I shared this with some friends online somewhere recently, but I remember a time where a really odd thing, because at a holiday, there was this family tension and that sort of thing. But what was really strange is it happened on occasion with the holidays and just about every other day, where my dad, my human father, blew a fuse, acted out, thought I said something that I didn't. Now he was committed, because now he was like accusing me. Now, instead of being wrong, he's like in his mind somewhere, oh, what am I going to do? He wasn't there yet, but he was going to get to this point where he's like, uh-oh. But he was committed. He was just committed. He was committed to being a jerk in general. So he flipped out and smacked me and threw me out the door. And I think I was probably 18, 20, somewhere in there. Threw me out the door. And he did this in other instances too. One time I talked to him when he was out of town, and He said, how's this job? Because he pulled strings to get me a job that he wanted me to have when I was 18. And I hated that job. I didn't want to have anything to do with it, but he forced. Finally, I said, I got to quit. I can't. I'm not happy. He said, if you quit, be out of my house when I get home. So 2 days later, I was out of his house. Now, he was committed to his threat, you see, but then he looked bad to people for throwing his kid out. I was actually underage. So he looked bad. Now he resented me. Later, he told me, I resented you because you left the house when you were a kid. I said, you threw me out. No, I didn't. He committed to it. And you have people in your life that have committed to tantrums and turning their back on you or throwing you under the bus or gossiping about you. And it's like once they get the ball rolling, it's a commitment. And commitments are like contracts. They're like soul contracts in a sense. And people can feel embarrassed or humiliated to try to change tracks once they're rolling that track. And so that time when he threw me out of the house during the holiday, somehow by the time I got home, and I was a little upset, but confused, man, like, wow. And got home, and then I get this phone call. Someone had told him, that wasn't Michael who said that. Now, he was committed to hating me, so in his mind, it was already going to be Michael, but it wasn't Michael. So now he feels bad. Do you think he threw the other person out? No, it was me that he would throw out, not somebody else. So all he could do for me is, because now he's humiliated, but this is one of the few times he had to take a breath, call, humble himself and say, I'm sorry. It was like maybe twice that I can recall in my life with him. But he said, I'm sorry, come on back. And I'm like, no, not only to punish him. I'm like, I felt humiliated. It looks stupid to go back after getting smacked and thrown out the door. It's all a scene. I'm not going to go back. He said, no, you have to. I'm going to look bad if you don't. So for his own, how I'm going to look kind of thing, I went ahead and went back. It was the okay thing to do. You could think it could be enabling, but it was okay because turning something around was worth it, in that moment, at least that time, so got to be careful. I've used tools of commitment with people, friends, students that start to, look, because everybody does this. All relationships have 3 stages: the beautiful stage, the things fall apart stage, and then the if you survive that stage, which most people don't reach. It's usually 1 and 2 they reach. So there's times when even students are going to go, man, Michael is wonderful. I like this guy. He's a teacher. Wonderful, wonderful, whatever. His books, his teachings, wow. They're all wowed. Something I say, a look, a misunderstanding, a gossip, whatever. I remember one time I was on tour and some lady had a session, and then she booked it. And she was like, "Oh, Michael, you're amazing." When I had the session, I sat down with her, so how's it going, and there was a different vibe with her, and I'm thinking, this is like a completely different person from just yesterday when she booked her session. And at the end of the session, I found out why. And she said, so how do you feel about things? I'm like, things, oh, good, life. Yeah. No, but I mean about like the internet issues. I don't know, what internet issues, Well, I saw somebody was saying rude things on one of your posts, about you. And I'm like, I don't even know about that. But in her mind, what she was doing was fishing. She was searching for, I really like this guy. There's got to be something I can find that's going to, sober me up. That's what people do. So she was committed to finding something. She found some arbitrary thing that some person said that was ludicrous, and then decided to try it on me, to push on me with it, to see, can you make me fall out of love with you as a teacher? I don't mean love, but I mean, can you make me fall out of love, lose respect for you in some way? Because this is confusing me, having so much respect for somebody. They did this to Jesus too. I mean, when he rode into Jerusalem at the end, everybody was singing praises. I mean, the sun barely went down. I mean, a couple of days later, they were crucifying him. And the same people were chanting, crucify this guy. How can people go from such love and adoration to such hatred? It's really, really surreal, if nothing else. All right. So, sorry, my phone sometimes goes off. So, I would just say what I do with students sometimes is I'll just push the envelope a little. Sometimes I'll just say to them, look, you've asked me 3 times about something. Go there or don't go there. Love me or hate me, just make a decision, make a commitment, show where you're at. Jesus did that with Judas and others in the stories of Gospels, but with Judas, he did the same thing. Look, you're going to do this, just go do it. Make your commitment. You're here or there. Just don't be on the fence anymore, right? So it's just something that I've done at times, and I've also shared at times. Last Sunday, I shared a story where a couple came to me for counseling, and they were just dilly-dallying, playing these like weird psychobabble, pop psychology games with each other. Well, I'm just feeling that you're not honoring me. Well, I'm feeling da da da, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm like in some psychobabble ping pong game, And then I just went for it and told them both, hey, I didn't tell you this, but one of you told me this relationship's over, and they both got, whoa! It just blasted them, blew it all out of the water. Then I told them afterwards, that I made that up, which I did. But, because it was the right thing to do. Done with the games. What if this is over? Now, you both think it's over. How do you feel? Can you live with it being over? And, after kind of looking at that, because it's the shock, but then it's as though it happened. It ended. For all intents and purposes, they thought it was over. And, because we took a break and I told them that I was talking to both of them, which I did do, but I didn't tell them that I didn't actually hear one of them say they were quitting the relationship. I just said, that's what I heard, but I didn't, it wasn't true. And so the other thought it was the other. And so it blew it all out of the water. Now they're sitting there going, wow, what if it is over? And they realized, especially one of them, yeah, I could live with this being over. This is actually, unconsciously, I've been engaged in a sick kind of game that's been going around and around. And so now they were, willing to sober up and come out of that. So their commitments, again, are like soul contracts, but there is a clause. There really is. There's kind of a clause that you can use. It's just like breaking soul contracts. I mean, if you see that a commitment is unhealthy, you're allowed and encouraged by all that is love and life to say, you know what, this isn't working anymore. But don't just let them kind of fade and sit there as dangling cords. Try to see them for what they are and end them if you can. Try to see them for what they are. Okay? Just something to keep in mind, guys. What else can I say about commitments? I mean, I'm not trying to come across like I'm speaking that there's only such thing as negative commitments. We all know that there's a couple of types of commitments. We know that, so be it. But, there's far too many unhealthy commitments that people make. I mean, it's the weirdest thing. They make commitments out of convenience, which I think is going to have to be a talk I do, completely separate topic, just on the topic of convenience. So we'll do that sometime. But, when you make decisions, try to recognize you're making a commitment when you make a decision. I'm going to take this job or that job. It's sort of a commitment. So ask yourself when you're making decisions, what if I call this a commitment? Because that might make you go, ooh, I don't mind settling. But when you use the word commitment, it starts to feel kind of weird. That might be, a major sign, guys, that this isn't for you. If you start to get squeamish when you use the word commitment, like to a relationship, a partnership, or whatever, people just don't realize that energetically you are putting your attention on something. So you're committing to it to some degree. Now, how much can you afford? Can you afford to put your commitment? Now, even though we think of commitment as absolute in stone, I do, marriage contract, I do, job contract, I do, whatever. It isn't. It's all the things you put your attention on become small commitments, but then can also grow into huge commitments. But ask yourself, if this is a commitment, how do I feel about it? Well, it's not a commitment. It's just a small amount of that. It's still a commitment. How do you feel, or do you feel differently when you use a little more serious terminology for it? And like I said, if you feel squeamish, it's something to reconsider. All right. When I think of, let me add another phrase to this, another concept. it doesn't mean that just because we selfishly want to make or break commitments, you get away with it. When I said you could break them, that doesn't mean you can go, oh, look, I told somebody I would go on a trip with them, commitment. And, my guides are telling me, I guess I just won't go. It doesn't mean you should loosely harm people by dumping commitments and breaking commitments left and right. I'm not saying that at all. So please do not even try to go there, because that's the opposite of what I would ever encourage. I'm not saying you should go on that trip, such a trip, not wanting to either. I think it's something you need to take responsibility for and talk about, telling your friend, because they're all packed up, they're ready to go, and you decided, gee, I guess not. No, it's not appropriate. That's why all these comedians, so often comedians have made jokes about commitments and New Year's resolution. I mean, a New Year's resolution should not be a common joke. It's a commitment. Why are we making jokes about breaking New Year's resolutions? And that's what their comedians are saying. They're not making jokes about people keeping them. They're making jokes about people breaking them, because that's what usually happens. So it's really, really strange. But, commitments are vows of sorts, for lack, of a better or other term. If we just narrowed it down, you call it a vow, call it a soul contract. They're all kind of the same. They're all very, very similar. They have to do with you saying to the universe, here's where I am. But then next thing you know, I didn't say that. The universe hears it. The universe is the Akashic records. It has complete video and audio evidence of all your commitments. You should not even want to break commitments unnecessarily. Again, there's time and place for them. If you see something's unhealthy, yeah, you might have to back out of that. But don't make commitments. Keep your mouth shut. Don't tell your kids you're going to have consequences if you're not going to bring them out, those consequences. Don't say you're going to go on a trip if you're not. We make mistakes. Then apologize and make amends. Okay? And recognize, what commitments have you made, guys, that are more for your higher good? What commitments have you made that are really more ego-based? The ones that are no longer for your higher good or never were for your higher good, I would just say, I'm committed to healthiness. And I've told a lot of people to say that to family members. You don't want to say, I'm committed, you're not. You just say, here's where I'm at. I'm really, really working on being a healthier person. See, that almost implies that I'm taking a little of the hit if anything's gone awry in our relationship. Yeah, I'm really working on being healthier and being a better person. What you're basically saying is, this family is so messed up, I'm out of here. But you don't say that. You talk about you, and you talk about the changes you're making, because that's true. You are trying to make changes and commitments towards a better life, a different life. Even when people don't think they made commitments, not making a commitment is still a commitment in many cases, because you're still, and you'll pay dearly. The universe, it brings that stuff back with interest rates, because it's trying to say, honey, would you consider please not making commitments to things that are unhealthy? And we just don't hear it. Don't hear it, don't hear it, don't hear it. Bam. Then all of a sudden we're like, wow, now I'm committed to being sick or broken down or financially destitute because people don't trust me anymore because of the unhealthy commitments you were constantly making. You can say, yeah, there's such a thing as committing to sobriety or being clean and sober. But there's also a commitment you made to be an addict. You would think that's not really a commitment. It is. You put your attention on it and you're damn committed to it, man. People that are addicts often they would die rather than let that commitment go. I know the word doesn't fit well for some, because you think of commitments as typically jobs and or positives. Anything you're putting your attention on that you're stuck on, you're committed to. I seem to be hell-bent on that addiction. And that's the same thing as a commitment. So I would say this, guys, in starting to close, healthy commitments are always about the self, going attention or whatever in one direction or another. But if I'm trying to improve my sense of commitments, clean up my commitments, make them healthier, then keep that in mind. you're really wanting to make commitments towards a healthier self versus an unhealthier self. Use that measure and it'll save you lots and lots of trouble and time. Just use that measure. Does this feel, if this is a commitment, does this feel like a commitment towards my healthy self or unhealthy self? And that will help just kind of split the waters right down the middle. And if you're going to make commitments, sometimes be careful not to do grandiose commitments or grand commitments, because typically they're hard to live up to. You crash and then you're committed to being a failure. Subconsciously or consciously, you're now fated or committed. Yeah, this happens all the time. I make these great ideas, these great plans. I'm going to get a soul's purpose job. I can't wait till I meet the perfect person. Oh, I met somebody and now we're dating. Crash, crash, crash. It never goes well for me. I'm a failure. That's now a commitment, a vow to be a failure. So why don't you instead make commitments that you can use that work? Make commitments for your real healthy self. So make manageable doses. I'm going to cut back on this instead of I'll never do that again. You know, what drinker bent over a toilet bowl hasn't made that commitment? Never again will I drink. It's short-lived. It's left as a cord hanging out there, and you're right back to it when you sober up or your friends call. So there's got to be more of a measured doses, guys, because that's what you would do for a child. So do it for yourself. You wouldn't tell a child, let's do something you can't do. It's too much for you. And if you did, you're a hurtful person. Just let's keep it manageable, honey. Let's try this. Hey, look, you did it. Wow. Teaching the kid to tie a shoe, first, whoa, you're halfway there. Good job. Credit, accomplishment, rather than, the screw ups and say, get it all done right at once without me showing you stages of it. That's too much. And if you wouldn't do it to them, I wouldn't do it to yourself. Okay. So I appreciate your time and that you guys are enough into self-help that you would watch shows like this. It's beautiful. Remember, simple things like give yourself measured doses, relationships. Stop telling somebody I do forever. Try, let's do this now and give ourselves measured doses. Can we date for a few months and see? How about we check back in such and such a date, January 1st or June 1st, July 1st, whatever, and check in and see if this is really working. Grow it, because that's healthy. That's the healthy way to do it. Don't just pump out kids, have kids and not know if it's really working. Are you loving each other as partners before you bring a child forth? And then did it work out? Was there a lot of love? Was there a lot of happiness? Test things before you go further. When you eat, stop and breathe long enough to see if you feel full instead of, I'm not full till I complete this bowl. How do you know? Most stomachs are satisfied before the mind even knows it because you're eating too fast. And it takes a moment for that vibe of, okay, here we are. We're feeling full. You go too far and you feel upset stomach or whatever it happens to be with alcohol, with drugs or whatever, too far. What do you think overdosing is? Too much. Try measured doses. It's okay to take an aspirin or two when you have a headache, depending on the prescription or suggested dosage. So it's okay. But really, do you go one, oh, headache still there, two, headache still there, three, really? And in 60 seconds, you've got 60 of them in you. It doesn't make sense. But that's what people do. I'm committed to losing this headache. No, you're committed to taking too many pills. Pace yourself. I'm committed to healthiness. Let me take one or two. Oh, it says this might take 30 minutes to kick in. That's healthy. It's okay if you got to take an aspirin, take it, but in a healthy way. It's okay to be in a relationship. Pace yourself. Check it out. Check in. I mean, I'm not saying sometimes the magic's there from day one, but don't say there's magic. Yeah, I just also, lost my partner. They passed away yesterday, and my life's been terrible, and I can't make my mortgage. But I'm really in a desperate place. But that's nothing to do with it. I'm just in love, so let's get married today. It doesn't make any sense. Feel the magic, enjoy it, but pace it. Hey, can we try this out for a little while? This feels pretty cool. That's maturity. It really is. That's maturity. Then we make longer term commitments and longer term. And just because a client said a few days ago in a session, um, I've been looking for my soul's purpose, and you'll know who you are because you're probably watching. I've been looking for my soul's purpose, but this specific client said, and I haven't found it. Well, what have you done? Da, da, da. And I asked some questions, and they talked about a project they did, a job they created, a business they opened, and it was all the elements of their soul's purpose were there. But because, well, that can't be it because it ended. See, that is dangerous. You should put a timeline on it. I'm going to do this for a year, 2 years, whatever, and it's perfectly done. Oh my God, congratulations. God got us. You accomplished something which many people don't even get to know what a soul's purpose is because they choose not to know. But you did it and you pulled it off for years. Good job. And they failed that. They accidentally, which is not an accident because that's the ego infiltrating the mind, made themselves think it's failed. It ended, so it failed. No, do not tolerate that sort of thing. Don't even remotely go there, please. As the saying goes, you cannot afford the luxury of a negative thought. All right, so see what you can do, guys. See what you can do with this. Commitments, they can be really fun, but keep them healthy. All right. So God bless. Thanks for being with us. Remember, we do these shows every 5:30 every Friday. Donation wise, guys, anything you can do, we greatly appreciate it. If you can't do anything, no worries. But really do your best. When you watch these, try to make notes so they become yours, not just something you watched in one ear, out the other. Commit to gaining something from anything you study, learn, read, watch. Do your best, all right, to just absorb and become that better person. God bless you all. We'll see you very soon, I hope. Bye-bye.